Good evening, everybody. Let's hope this evening we don't have any technology glitches like we did last time. Welcome to this meeting of Dacorum Borough Council's Development Management Committee. My name is Councillor Gareth Stevens, and I'm chair of the committee. Our vice chair is Councillor Fiona Guest, and she's sitting there. The other members of the committee in attendance are Councillors Allen, Bromham, Smith-Wright, Jankowski, Hobson, Collett-Wyatt-Lowe, Councillor Riddick, Councillor Walker, Councillor Durrant, and Councillor Guest is sitting down here at the front. There are a number of council officers in attendance, and the lead officer is Philip Stanley, who's head of planning.
One of her yodel things that she did all that. What is it?
They are. First glitch. There's an appeal during the course of my spiel here, which says turn off your mobiles. Right. We got to Philip Stanley, I think it was, right? The other officers in attendance are Robert Freeman, Joan Reid, Elspeth Palmer. And between them, they will be making the presentation of this evening. We've got Lillian Adugu here, who is our legal officer and is here to make sure that we comply with the legal requirements of development management. And Kaylee Johnson here, takes the minutes and makes sure that we run to time wherever we can. We're not expecting a fire drill this evening, but if the alarm sounds, please make your way to the ground floor and assemble outside. If the meeting is extended, there may be a comfort break during this meeting at around 9 p.m. Before we start, please mute or turn off your mobile phones. Anyway, I said. Items on the agenda. To approve the minutes of the last meeting of the committee, which was held on the 18th of September. They have been circulated. Do I have your agreement to sign them as agreed? Agreed? Thank you. Apologies for absence. We've had an apology from Councillor Patterson, and Councillor Smith-Wright is standing in for him, substituting, and Councillor Mitchell has sent an apology. Declarations of interest. The next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Please can I remind members to declare any disclosable pecuniary or other interest at the beginning of the relevant planning application. Any member who declares an interest will be allowed to stay in the meeting but will not have the right to vote. I will also want to remind members that only those present during the entire debate for an item are entitled to vote on it. On public participation. The rules of public participation. We have a number of members of the public who have registered to speak, and the list has been circulated. Our normal practice is to bring forward applications where a speaker is present, and we have quite a number of speakers on the applications tonight. You will be invited to address the meeting when the item you have registered to speak is to be discussed. The normal procedure and rules in respect of times to speak will apply. Time per speaker is 3 minutes, and where more than one person is speaking on a planning application, the shared time is increased from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. And the 5 minutes will be shared equally unless the sharing of time has otherwise been arranged prior to the meeting. And ward councillors will be entitled to their own 5 minutes to speak. And speakers in objection to the officer's recommendations are taken first. A timer will be displayed on the screen and times will be strictly enforced. And members of the public will not be entitled to take part in the discussion that follows the public speakers. I have the discretion to remove any member of the public from the meeting if they interrupt, try to engage in the discussion, or are abusive. For each application, the officer will present the report to the committee. Then the participants from the public are called to speak. Following this, questions are taken from the committee along with statements and comments for debate. There will be a vote among councillors which will represent the decisions of this committee. Now, item 5A is the first item on the agenda, and this relates to the barn on Nettleden Road, Frithsden. This got deferred at the last council meeting, and it was a meeting in which I absented myself from the chair as I know the applicants. So consequently, for transparency's sake, I'm standing down and Councillor Guest will be chairing this particular item. So, Councillor Guest.
Can everyone hear me loud and clear? The first item on the agenda is to application 5A, which is the barn, Nettleden Road, Frithsden. The case officer for this is Sally Robbins, but Sally isn't with this authority anymore. So, Phil, who's going to be presenting this application?
Thank you, Chair. I'll be presenting this application.
So it's over to you when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. Item 5A is a proposal to increase in ridge height, insertion of dormer window, alteration to openings, new landscaping and change of use to a Class C3 dwelling. The application is before members due to the contrary views of the parish council, who concur with the views of the Nettleden and Frithsden Society, in particular in respect of concerns regarding the extra height and the extra openings and resultant light emanating from the proposed building. The item was deferred from the last meeting so that the report could include considerations in respect of the registered park and garden on the other side of Nettleden Road, and those considerations are now fully encompassed within the officer's report. Just before I start, there is a couple of changes to conditions. Condition 7, which is a condition requiring details of external lighting, there needs to be an additional sentence that says there shall be no external lighting other than that approved through this condition. And it's also proposed to add an additional condition, which will be for the removal of permitted development rights in respect of Schedule 2, Part 1, classes B, C, E and H. So this relates to roof alterations, roof lights, outbuildings and satellite dishes, and also Part 2, Class C, which relates to the painting of the exterior. And these rights are all to reduce the impact of the proposals, or to retain control of the proposals in the context of the national landscape. So in terms of the first slide, the site is on the southern side of Nettleden Road, within the Metropolitan Greenbelt and southeast of the village of Frithsden. The land rises steeply to the south. Next slide. This site is presented to members to show the context of the site with the surrounding public rights of way network, and so the one in green being a bridle way. And we can see several footpaths to the south of the site. And a summary here of the proposals. The building uses stables. I've talked about its location. The surrounding area is very much rural in character, with containing limited built development. Moving on to the site photographs. Here we are on Nettleden Road, accessing this is the access or the entrance into the site. As we continue along that track, we reach the eastern elevation comes into view. And it's worth noting on the right-hand side, the tall trees, hedgerows, vegetation that effectively completely screen the site from Nettleden Road itself. This is a full view of the southern elevation, showing the existing materials. So obviously the light material on the roof and the brickwork for the walls. And now we turn to facing the other direction to show the western elevation of the existing building. So here is a view from one of the public footpaths that I presented to members earlier. It demonstrates that the existing roof is visible, but obviously this is at a relatively long distance, and it also demonstrates that the elevations of the building is screened by the slope. The downward slope of the land results in a view of the roof, but not of the walls. So the key aspects of the proposal is to raise the ridge by 0.65 of a metre, insert the dormer window, and there are other openings on the ground floor, all contained within the south elevation, and then to convert the barn to a one-bed dwelling with associated landscaping and parking provision. It's very important for members to note that there is previous permissions for the conversions to a dwelling. So converting the property to a dwelling has been accepted by the council, and the latest permission is still extant. So what members are effectively considering here is the different impact caused by the raising of the ridge and the different openings. And the proposed site plan shows that the existing track then continues for about 70 metres. You would then reach the Follies Farm donkey sanctuary there on the west. And we can quickly go through the floor plans. This is the ground floor plan. And here we can see the single bedroom of the proposed one-bedroom property contained within the first floor. So the proposed south elevation demonstrates that those key features that I previously talked about in terms of the dormer window and that expanse of glazing on the ground floor. The northern elevation is the one that faces that roadside hedgerow, and we can also see the eastern elevation below. So this slide just shows to members the difference through the evolution of the scheme in terms of materiality. We can see that the existing and proposed schemes are very similar in terms of brickwork and the lightness of the roof. So the consented scheme, a scheme that could be carried out, has an even kind of brighter material on the roof. But it is important to recognise that there is a condition, condition 5, which requires details to be confirmed of the external materials. And the applicant has confirmed that they have no objection in principle to achieving a darker finish to the roof. So this is not to finish an artist's impression of the proposed building. As I've mentioned, there is a condition seeking to control the external appearance of the roof and to achieve a darker finish. It's therefore, in the view of officers, this is an opportunity to improve that roofscape. Members saw its appearance from the public footpath, and a darker finish would help to soften that impact. So on balance, it's the officer's view that the benefits outweigh the limited visual impact of the proposals, and therefore it's recommended delegated with a view to approval, subject to a deed of variation to the existing legal agreement, the conditions as set out in the report, and the amended condition and additional condition I outlined at the beginning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. There are speakers on this application. The normal practice is to call the speakers against the officer recommendation first, then the speakers for the officer recommendation. The first speaker I'll call will be Alison McDougall of the Nettleden, Frithsden and District Society. So, Ms McDougall, you have 3 minutes when you're ready. If you press the silver button on the microphone base unit to activate it, 3 minutes when you're ready, please.
Good evening, Chair and Councillors. I speak on behalf of the Nettleden and Frithsden Society. We'd like you to look at the photos that we've provided and have been uploaded in the documents section to this application, which show rather more of the southern elevation can be seen from the public footpath than appears from the photos shown this evening. We wish to address you on 2 points: light spill and design. The southern elevation is proposed to be over 50% glass with windows in the raised roof. Cumulatively, this will have a substantial light box effect and is completely contrary to the Children's Design Guide Policy, DP8, which states that architectural designs that spill light out of large areas of glazing should be avoided. The planning officer has acknowledged the proposal could introduce harm through light spill at night and reflectivity during the day, but thinks it can be controlled by a condition. This is not how the latest Chilterns National Landscape Lighting Planning Guidance, dated June 2025, says that lighting for new development should be dealt with. As we stated in our email included in the addendum document issued today, in essence, the guidance says that applications must be accompanied by a comprehensive lighting assessment that addresses, amongst other things, the visibility of lighting within the landscape, the footprint of the lighting, nature of spill from windows, and overall assessment of glow, glare, and light trespass. It also states that a detailed assessment of the ecological sensitivity of the location is carried out to review the impact of lighting on bats and other species. This location is only about 100 metres from a known bat habitat, and no such assessment has been provided. The new guidance is clear that large glazing panels, such as floor-to-ceiling glazing, are unlikely to be considered appropriate in the Chilterns National Landscape, unless a design is incorporated to mitigate artificial light spill. Simply imposing a condition requiring lighting designs to be submitted post-planning approval is contrary to the guidance and unsatisfactory, as it does not allow the public to properly scrutinise and comment on a key element of this design, with potential for significant harm to the bat roost, known by Decorum and the Bat Conservation Trust to be in the close vicinity. In terms of design, the proposed changes mean that the agricultural appearance of the building has been lost. While the existing building is not in the Chilterns vernacular, the proposal is so far removed from that style that it will become a jarring note in this protected landscape. And in order for the project not to cause substantial harm, it needs to retain the single story and small windows of the previous improved plans. The Conservation Officer has suggested the impact will be lessened if the size of the dormer window be reduced from 6 metres to 4 metres, which we agree would help. Until a full lighting assessment has been submitted, including assessment on the impact on protected species affected by lighting spill, this application should not be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping so well to time. The next speaker I'm going to call is Parish Councillor Eamon Brennan, who's also speaking in objection to the application. Councillor Brennan, you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Good evening, councillors, and thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak. My name is Eamon Brennan, Parish Councillor at Nettleden with Bottom End Parish Council. There are 5 points I want to run through here. That's the council's position on this application, the concerns about precedent visual impact, the impact on the green belt, the landscape and the heritage, as well as the broader context and policy concerns, and then finally the risks and wider implications. So, Parish Council's position on this application: we initially supported the prior application for redevelopment, but now we oppose the current proposal due to substantial design alterations. The council concur with the Nettleden Frithsden Society that the new design is inappropriate for the site. We stress that the strict planning controls and the visual appearance of barn conversions must apply, especially given the site's location within the Greenbelt, Chiltern's natural landscape, and within the near Grade 2 Ashridge Park and Gardens. We insist that the barn should retain its existing exterior appearance post-conversion, opposing oversized windows and the introduction of brick elevations. Precedent and visual impact. The council warns that approving this application, particularly the addition of a second story via raising the roof, could set a dangerous precedent of future conversions of nearby agricultural buildings within the vicinity. The recent use of a Section 73 procedure in the vicinity, which allowed a large house, Frithsden Vineyard, to be expanded from 2 to 3 stories, with further enlargement applications underway. We fear that allowing a second story here could enable further roof alterations, significantly increasing accommodation and negatively impacting the landscape. We highlight that the mezzanine level and the dormer windows would be clearly visible from nearby footpaths, confirming the visual perception of a 2-story dwelling. The impact on the Greenbelt, the landscape and heritage. The application is criticised for its negative visual impact on the Greenbelt, harm to Chiltern's national landscape, and damage to the setting of the Grade 2 Registered Park and Gardens. The council notes that the cumulative effect of approving multiple barn conversions to residential use threatens the openness of the Greenbelt and the countryside's protection from encroachment, a key Greenbelt purpose. The broader context and policy concerns. It's hard to understand why the local authority seems unable to fully remove permitted development rights from such extensions and outbuildings, and seems to be keen on dealing with these on a piecemeal basis. This could exacerbate the situation, particularly, as I say, in the situation of post-approval. Additionally, a new application to convert 5 acres farm, located just metres from the road, has been submitted, raising concerns about the cumulative effect on the area. In summary, the Parish Council urges refusal of the application due to effects on the visual character, landscape and heritage.
Time's up. I'll now call the next speaker, who is Mark Cannon, who's speaking in support of the application. Mr. Cannon, you have 5 minutes when you're ready. The correct 3 minutes when you're ready.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. This application, as has been described already this evening, is not an application for a new dwelling in the Greenbelt, but a more careful and sustainable evolution of the existing consent. The approved scheme would have reclad the entire barn in black timber and new brickwork, with a standing seam roof and over 13 external openings, including full height glazing on the south elevation. This proposal takes a quieter path. Our approach is simple: to protect what exists. The flattened brick walls are retained, the corrugated metal roof reinstated to match the existing. The footprint and roof pitch and angle remain unchanged. This is about honesty of material and letting the barn sit gently in its meadow as it has for decades. From the road and long distant views from footpaths, the building will remain very similar. Brick and metal roof glimpsed through mature hedgerows and trees, or a roof line viewed from above. Roof overhangs soften internal light and summer heat, ensuring the building does not glow at night. As described in the DAS, we have imagined this building as if the farming couple who once worked here had simply reassembled it with the same hands, materials, and care as other barns and outbuildings. In summary, the ridgeline increases by 65 centimetres, but stays well below the mature tree line. Glazing conditions, raised light fittings and overhangs will protect dark skies. Folly's Farm, the only neighbour with a direct view, supports the proposal. The next nearest dwelling is 150 metres away, screened by significant trees and planting. This proposal meets all relevant national and local planning policies, including CS5, CS24 and 27, ensuring an appropriate reuse of a permanent building without harm to the green belt, the Chilterns National Landscape, or nearby Ashridge Park and Gardens. This is a small, careful act of stewardship, a building repaired, not replaced, and one that continues to belong quietly to its place. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's over to the committee for questions and comments.
I was wondering if the officer could please comment on a few things that have been brought up by those presentations. Firstly, the precedent. What weight are we allowed to consider in relation to precedent? The second thing is the issues that have been brought up about the Chilterns National Landscape. If these design code, considerations within the Chilterns National Landscape are applied, then why is this being allowed to go through as it is, if it is in breach of that design code?
Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of precedent, the overarching point here is each application must be considered on its individual merits. There will be, in terms of other barn developments in the future, we will need to consider those proposals at that time based on the specific context, their relationship to footpaths, slopes, materiality. There could be a whole range of factors that could and would result in different decisions being made. So certainly, it's certainly not the view of officers that by allowing this scheme, that would automatically allow other schemes of that proposed a 0.65 raising of the roof. They wouldn't be automatically permissible because in the event of a grant here. In terms of the Chilterns National Landscape, yes, there's a whole series of planning guidance issued, and they support the Chilterns National Landscape Management Plan. It's my understanding that, however, these aren't adopted planning policies. These are guidance notes issued to support developers, to guide development, and to assist local authorities, I guess, in best practice, but it's not necessarily the same as planning policy. And certainly, in terms of the dark skies point, a lot of effort has been made in these proposals in that regard. The dormer has been designed with that significant overhang to have a far lesser impact than standard Velux roof lights would be. The ground floor has additional openings, but it's that ground floor that is very much largely screened by the downward slope from the public footpaths. And furthermore, there are conditions in proposed as part of the recommendation that would, as I've mentioned, has the potential to achieve darker roof materials and fundamentally controls external lighting. So with all those measures combined, it's the officer's view that this scheme remains acceptable from a national landscape perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Bromham, then Councillor Hobson, then Councillor Smith-Wright.
Yeah, so some of the concerns relate to the large area of glazing, which does look a bit out of place on a barn type construction. And the light pollution was raised, which is perhaps not the greatest concern. And I'm wondering whether there are any sort of regulatory concerns about bird impacts on such large areas of glass, which I know a lot of birds suffer that way, especially probably in rural settings, but also about the overheating aspect with the south-facing large areas of glass and the insulation.
Phil, would you be able to advise with the bird impact and overheating aspects because of the large south-facing areas of glass are material planning considerations?
Well, certainly impact on ecology and sustainability are material planning considerations, but there are design features here with the significant overhangs that seek to reduce that impact on the south-facing elevations. And certainly, in terms of ecology, we wouldn't necessarily consider the impact of an individual dwelling on birds per se, because obviously there will be, even in the rural area, there will be, there's hundreds of dwellings with openings. I think in terms of the wider point, in terms of the impact on protected species, on bats, we have consulted Hertfordshire Ecology. They have concluded that there would be unlikely to be any impacts, and they've recommended an informative should protected species be found. So officer's view is that is the correct approach in considering ecology for this application.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson, then Councillor Smith-Wright.
Thank you. I can't remember if we discussed this at the last one or if it was just deferred at the beginning, but just my only real comment is around lighting pollution, and I can't remember if I imagine that I discussed this. I brought this up last time or it was on a different application, but it's more to do with the comment made by one of the speakers about light pollution. And I know there's I can't remember, I just have a quick look now, I can't remember if it's a condition or it would be that we would agree, we're proposing to agree this, but then have a lighting plan. And I just wanted the officer's comments on the new regulations that were mentioned about needing a lighting assessment before planning is approved. If I could just have some advice on that, because I don't have a major problem with, I think a lot of the things that I address, I think on balance, which when we're looking at this, given its location and that it's basically the same footprint, I don't have a problem with that. But it's just really I think I remember talking about can you force automatic blinds when the sun goes down? I think we said no, if I've remembered that rightly. But if I could just have some advice on the whether it's right that we should be asking for a lighting assessment before we make a decision. Thank you.
So, as I mentioned in previous answer, it's my understanding that the guidance provided in terms of the Chiltern's lighting planning guidance is guidance as opposed to planning policy, and there are a variety of design measures and conditions attached to this this application, this proposals. Officers have very carefully considered the impact of lighting.
Thank you. I did hear you say that before with reference to external lighting, so I just wanted to check that also applied to overspill from inside lighting.
And if I can refer members also to condition 6 of the report, which details, so prior to the first occupation of the dwelling hereby permitted, details of the specification of glazing to be used on the southern elevation. And again, the reason for that condition is to minimize visible light transmittance. So it's a consideration that has been at the forefront of Ofstet's mind, and we feel through the combination of design features and conditions that this can be suitably controlled.
Councillor Smith-Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I didn't declare that I'm a county councillor for this area, but I'm prepared, I know nothing about it, I'm prepared to comment with an open mind, if you will allow it.
Thank you. Lillian, so if Councillor Smith-Wright comes up with an open mind, is she allowed to speak and vote?
Thank you. Yes, I am concerned that this can be seen from pathways. I walk those pathways and it's a fairly modern design, a light, bright roof, unlike any other in the area, which really concerns me. It doesn't feel like it's at all similar to the red brick houses and as it was previously a barn with red brick. It doesn't feel at all as if it's changed style enormously. So I have concerns about the light, the modern style, and the effect on ecology from the light, and also viewing it from afar. It stands out, and it is not a kind of similar design. So those are my comments. Philip, I don't know if you can respond. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I guess the only thing I would say in terms of the roof material, and it was clear from the photo taken from the public footpath that bright material is visible, but that's obviously the existing building. So the existing building is already visible. And this isn't making the building any wider in span, it's obviously elevating it slightly. So the impact of the roof would effectively be the same in Ofstet's view. And also the extant permission, the permission that can still be implemented, has an even brighter material. What members have before you this evening is actually an opportunity through that condition where we can secure potentially darker materials, converse to the existing situation and the extant permission.
I'll respond quickly.
Thank you. But before you do, Councillor Brennan, could you turn your microphone off, please? That's off now. And Councillor Smith-Wright.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. My concern is still there with the red brick and the amount of windows and glass. It is just completely different to the original building, and it's a heritage area. It's completely out of style, so I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I put it to the vote, Phil, as this is a conversion to residential, does the tilted balance apply?
So this, yes, because of the council's housing land supply position, the tilted balance would apply, but obviously this is a single dwelling proposal, so the weight afforded to a single dwelling would be proportionately less, but yes, it would. So the test would be to do the harm significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the scheme.
Thank you, Phil. The officer recommendation is to delegate this. Before I put this to the vote, Councillor Walker, have you got your hand up there? Right. So since you haven't got your hand up, the officer recommendation is to delegate with a view to approval. So is there a proposer for the officer recommendation? Is Councillor Durrant? Is there a seconder? Councillor White-Low?
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Allen.
I just wanted to ask a point of clarification, because I'm not clear after Councillor Smith-Wright's questions, what the nature of the brickwork of the new building compared to the existing building. Is it true to say that the brickwork is actually unchanged compared to the existing building? As in picture 3 here is what's proposed and picture 1 is what is there.
Yes, so as you say, picture 1 is what's there at the moment and picture 3 is what's proposed. But there is nevertheless condition 5, which does seek details of the materials to be used in the construction of the external surfaces of the development hereby permitted, including, it says including the finish and colour of the corrugated roof sheeting. So that's obviously the emphasis, but that condition does nevertheless capture the external finish to the walls as well. But it's anticipated that it would have a brick finish to match the existing, and the condition is principally to control the darkness of the material of the roof.
Thank you. Has that clarified it for you, Councillor Allen? So with that clarified, we have a proposer for the officer recommendation to delegate with a view to approval in Councillor Durrant, a seconder in Councillor White-Low. All in favour, please raise your hands. All against, please raise your hands. And abstentions? So that is delegated with a view to approval. And I will now vacate the chair in favour of Councillor Stevens. I did indeed.
Right. Moving on to item 5B, which is on page 36 of the pack. Change of use of land from equestrian to mixed use of equestrian and gypsy traveller site. Northwest side of Green Lane, Markyate. Robert Freeman is doing the presentation. Over to you, Robert.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So just to clarify, before we go into the slides, obviously this is for the change of use for land equestrian to equestrian and gypsy traveller pitch. The application is delegated with a view to approval, subject to completion of mitigation measures to address the impact on the Chilterns Beachwoods. And further to your agenda, it is also subject to an additional condition which was published in the addendum, covering further details on drainage specifically. There was some debate, significant debate with the Environment Agency over the permitting regime, the need for cesspits or alternative means of drainage to that site, so we have conditioned that moving forward. So if we could show the site location plans. So the location of the site is within the green belt. It's on the southern end of, opposite the southern end of the village of Markyate, and comprises a relatively thin strip of land between two established tree belts. primary concerns of the parish council are those in respect to the appropriateness of development in the green belts and the implications for highway safety, whereas the officer report clearly sets out the site may be considered grey belts with associated implications in terms of the principle, and that there are no objections in highway safety terms. So the next few slides on the presentation set out how planning permission was granted for a stables on site, and how the subsequent implementation of the permission has resulted in several changes which do not benefit from planning permission. These are now being applied for retrospectively with the addition of the single Gypsy and traveller pitch. That's a one family accommodation comprising a static home and a touring caravan. The changes in the nature of the development incrementally increases the extent of hard standing in the application site, as is evident from the block plans, together with some minor alterations to the appearance of the stable block. So, briefly before you, you have at the top there, you have the approved site plan for stables on the site. So it's a single stall, effectively a tack room, feed store and toilet. As was built on the site, that stable building has been located further to the northwest. The hard standing has been extended accordingly. And now onto the proposal. You'll see, obviously, that hard standing has been extended, seeking to be extended yet again to cover an area much larger, further 10 metres worth of hard standing, upon which there will be a static home effectively sited and a touring caravan. So now moving on to the elevations. So these are the proposed elevations of this stable building, as distinct from what was approved. And in floor plan terms, again, you've got a very similar kind of floor plan in terms of scale and appearance, with the main changes being relating to the extent of hard standing to the front of that building and the extent of overhang to the roof. Moving on to the site photos. So this is a view taken on the left-hand side, taken from Green Lane itself. So as you go into Green Lane off the A5, you end up with looking towards the application site on the left-hand side, which is beyond that bank of trees. You turn in towards Green Lane, which is on the right-hand side of the screen, where it opens up into a picture of the site. There's been a fence erected along the boundary. There's obviously landscaping to the front there, and an access point onto Green Lane itself. Moving on from that, slide taken from the site entrance, brick piers, gates, and the stable building that was constructed, not in accordance with the approved plan. And again, on the right-hand side, that's another view towards that stable building and showing the extent of hard standing that is extending further to the north of that site. So the application before you obviously seeks permission for the retention of the works that have been carried out and the siting of the Gypsy traveller pitch on that application site and within the hard standing area. And to reiterate, it's the officer's recommendation to approve this, subject to the completion of a legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Robert. Right, we have a number of speakers on this one. On 5B, we've got Parish Councillor Selma Hackey. Right, you have 3 minutes.
The site is original green belt and it's recently been reallocated grey belt. However, the grey belt states that the land is of poor quality within the green belt and previously developed land. This land was originally agricultural land and not of poor quality. There has also been no buildings up until July 2024 when the stables were erected. It must be noted that the stables built are in breach of the planning application number 2401552 DRC. It has a different structure and is erected in a different place than the original planning application. This surely must render this status irrelevant and still be considered as greenbelt. The council's own policy states that greenbelt is to be avoided wherever possible, along with areas of natural beauty. In addition, the policy also emphasises sites should have safe access to primary road networks. This site clearly falls short of this. Access is tight given the lane is the width of a single vehicle, which could present issues manoeuvring caravans in and out. It is set at a junction with Old Watling Street. Old Watling Street is a narrow residential road. The road is gated, with gates being intermittently closed, which renders this road impassable. It runs parallel with the A5183, with the north junction being directly opposite the junction of Markyate village. Because of the dangers of this stretch of A5183, it is currently undergoing safety measures. However, due to the complexity of the Old Watling Street junction, this issue has still not been resolved, and if granted, this site will only add to the complications. With these issues in mind, it is astounding that highways seem to have no concerns with this. The Council's key criteria for site selection and suitability states, Section 2.3 broad criteria. Locations that should be considered capable of delivering traveller sites should respect the scale and not dominate the nearest settled community. This particular site has installed 6 water taps, 2 septic tanks and numerous standpipes, as confirmed by the company who carried out the works. This is concerning considering the planning application is only for 1 touring caravan and 1 mobile home. It should be noted that all the original surface has been cleared back to chalk with no grazing land left at all. Council guidelines also state that sites should be dispersed and not concentrated in one area. Markyate village already has approximately 3 permanent traveller sites to the north of the village along the A5183, 2 more being applied to the south of the village along the A5183 and this application. There is 1 in Redbourne, although fire damaged at the moment. This is excessive and not in keeping with their own guidelines. Finally, the DMC report Appendix B only summarises residents' objections and does not include the full text. Some resident submissions are not reproduced in full at all. This limits transparency and downplays the issues raised. Residents have shown grave concern at this lack of information. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping to time as well. Right, and the next speaker is the ward councillor, Councillor Timmis. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening. I am the Borough Councillor for Watling Ward, a rural ward comprised of villages, agricultural land, green belt and area of outstanding natural beauty. I hope that the councillors sitting here tonight have read not only the planning officer's report, but also the local residents' responses. This application is in a tiny lane off Old Watling Street, the latter being a 1/3 of a mile long strip of the original Roman road, separated from the villages of Markyate and Hempstead by the A5183. It's quite rural, with agricultural land behind the road, with houses on either side in parts. I'm just going to expand on 2 or 3 issues with this application, which I feel render it as inappropriate. 1, the need for traveller sites. The planning officer states in para 8.14 that there is a total need for 71 pitches, up from 20, with the amended definition of travellers. However, the new local plan is about to be ratified, and there is an obligation within it to provide a number of traveller sites in the plan. So let's look at the provision in this area of traveller sites within, say, 4 miles. There are 5 existing sites, traveller sites between Markyate and Dunstable. That's under 4 miles. There are sites at Caddington, which is about a mile away, and 2 in Redbourne. There's hardly a paucity of traveller sites in the area. Another retrospective application at the other end of Old Watling Street for more traveller sites is currently being decided. In addition, there is a hotel currently housing approximately 125 immigrants or young men awaiting a Home Office decision. This is not relevant to this traveller site application on its own, but I think it should be taken in the context of the impact on existing residents of Old Watling Street. The definition of travellers are those of a nomadic culture. However, this application, as with others, is for static caravan. You're not allowed to take up residence in a caravan on your own driveway, but if you buy a bit of land, you can set up several static caravans with planning permission, of course. My second thing is what I would call a certain amount of deception by the applicants. It was quite obvious that the applicant had no intention of using the initial application for horses. It was a means to a different end. Anyone who knows anything about horses would know that putting down gravel in front of the stable is totally unsuitable, and the entire site is less than half an acre, insufficient for a horse by the British Horse Society definition. The original development did not comply with the agreed plans, in many ways an example being putting hardcore much further into the field, reducing the grazing such as it was for the fictional horse. 6 standpipes were erected in the field. For what? For just one static and one travelling caravan? I suggest that has an alternative motive. The planning officer talks about the existing equestrian land use, which is plainly not true. It's not existing as a use, and he uses this fallacy as the basis for the granting of this application. Third issue is adjusting the green belt policy to fit the requirements of the planning application. The official planning policy for traveller sites states that these sites are inappropriate in the green belt. The planning officer justifies the acceptance of what is an illegal development by renaming this piece of green belt grey belt, so then it's okay. One can only assume that highways have not visited the site and roads in person, but have viewed it from a Google map. This is a tiny lane which is barriered at the far end, and there are plans to shut off Old Watling Street at one end to prevent A5183 traffic from using it as a rat run. If this site expands to provide 6 static caravans, I suggest this road would be inadequate. It should be noted that the environment survey by Herts County Council was not able to be done, as the site had been razed to the ground before the first application. Therefore, for the reasons of unproven need, impact on the local residents, and the redefining of green belt, I ask you to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Timmins. Right, councillors. Questions, points, comments? Over to you. Councillor Janowski first.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points from me. A couple of the speakers mentioned public comments and them not being included in the report. Are they available on the portal? And my second point is just around, there's been a lot bit of discussion around sort of green versus grey belt. I just wondered if officers could clarify on that and just shed a bit more light on that for me. Thank you.
Robert.
Yes, so just to clarify in terms of the public comments, I am satisfied that I have included all of the planning comments within the summary of representations accurately. I appreciate there is a difference of opinion regarding that matter, but there is a clarification note actually in your addendum about how that has worked its way through. The public comments, unfortunately, are not available on the portal because a number of them have been submitted anonymously and by a parish councillor. Because of the nature of those submissions, it's not possible to quantify precisely the level of opposition, although I would estimate that that is within 25 to 30 representations of objection to this scheme. So I think that covers the first issue with regards to representations. Nevertheless, even that summary document does include quite specific references to comments made within the objector's agents' planning representations. It specifically quotes appeal decisions. So it is evident that that summary of concerns, the professional concerns that have been raised by the objectors, have been taken into account. Moving on towards the definitions of grey belt, there has been some misdirection, I think, by the parish and the ward councillor in terms of this point. I think Councillor Haki mentioned that grey belt land was effectively land that was of poor quality in the green belts and has been detracted from. That is not true. Annex 2 of the MPPF defines grey belt land. And grey belt land is defined as land within the green belt that comprises previously developed land and or any other land that in the case does not strongly contribute to any purpose under A, B, and D in paragraph 143 of the MPPF. I'm quite clear in the report that this site comprises other land and has no value under Greenbelt purposes A, B, and D. And on that basis, cannot be reasonably concluded to be anything other than Greenbelt land.
Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Right, okay. The next speaker is Councillor Smith-Wright, and then we have Councillor Wyatt-Lowe, and then we have Councillor Guest, and then we have Councillor Bromham.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to comment that I am a county councillor for this area, but I have not seen this application before, and I can proceed with an open mind if that's permitted. Thank you.
Councillor Wyatt-Lowe, then.
Thank you. Yes, so I again have some concerns. The existing residents are under pressure quite clearly with the amount of traveller sites surrounding them, and in addition, the Holiday Inn refugee hotel, plus the highways issue of Old Watling Street, which, as has been commented, is under review and is yet to be decided about a very narrow access route, possibly being blocked off. So I find it quite extraordinary that we are making this decision before we have any clarification on the existing road, whether it will be a dead-end road or a one-way street. So I've got two concerns. I'd like to support the residents in this, and I do have concerns about highways, and I'm wondering whether that's been taken into consideration. Thank you.
Robert, can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Highway Authority obviously will be aware of proposals going through in considering planning applications. You would have to ask, obviously, the Highway Officer directly to confirm that as being the point. I also want to comment on the highway works that are being undertaken to the A5 138. As I understand it, that doesn't actually involve any closure of access points onto it. The plans I've seen have effectively talk about signalisation of some of the junctions to encourage safer access onto the A5 138. But if someone can point me in a direction of something that contradicts that, I'm happy to obviously review that. Ultimately, we will be guided by the Highway Authority, and the Highway Authority are, as a consultee on this application, not raising any objections to the proposals. And obviously, they would stand by that advice.
Well, I am concerned because I do think there is a proposal going forward to actually shut off that road. So I am concerned that we're kind of going forward with this with an unknown outcome. It's going to consultation, I believe. So it has not been decided what's going to happen with Old Watling Street, which is directly the direct access to this site.
Thank you for your comment. The highways comment, in fact, that's in the report says the Highway Authority does not wish to restrict the grant of permission. So that's a pretty strong contradiction to that. Now, the next speaker is Councillor Wyatt-Lowe.
Thank you, Chairman. I have some questions about the previous position, planning permission. Two speakers both alleged that the original planning permission was not adhered to in various aspects, and indeed the report itself says that the permission was not implemented fully in accordance with the approved plan. I'm just wondering how far the original plans were in fact carried out at all, and also if the applicant, it's the same applicant, was not able to implement fully in accordance with the approved plans as set out. Why is this not a retrospective planning application? And thirdly, that if there has been failure already to implement a fairly simple planning brief, then how can we have any confidence that the applicant will stick to what is now being sought? Or, you know, I would welcome Robert's views on that, please.
Yeah, so if I go back to the slides that show what was approved and what was proposed, I think that was right at the very beginning. Yeah, so I mean, essentially in terms of the stables, you've got the stable block being the same size as the approval. It is located obviously much further into the site than was approved. And there are changes primarily in removing windows actually on the rear elevation of that building and changing the nature of the doors and openings on the front elevation of that proposal. In my view, those changes are probably not material in terms of the planning permission that was granted. So it would perfectly be entitled to grant retrospective permission in respect of those elements. And indeed, we are recommending that through this application. The application is not solely retrospective, as it obviously incorporates the Gypsy and Traveller pitch sites, but nonetheless, you could implement the existing stable permission, which is still a live permission, if you were so forced to do so. Obviously, that represents quite a significant fallback position for the applicants in terms of impact on openness and impact on the greenbelt location. And this is for those reasons, obviously, that we are supporting the changes to that.
Councillor White,
I do have a supplementary comment, if you will, Chairman. We already have very recently seen issues with regard to the Veer, the Traverse site at Veer Meadow, where allegations have been made that it was overcrowded. We have, in my own ward, the Cherry Traveller site, where I was in there recently, where you cannot walk around the site safely because there are so many parked cars in there that shouldn't be in there. I'm concerned about the location of this site, in particular in relation to the possible build-up of traffic from it. I'm deeply concerned that it won't just stay at the one stable block, although this is not a planning matter, but however, it's something that I would be very anxious to grant permission for unless there is an absolutely rock-solid stipulation that it could only be one traveller pitch and one travelling caravan on that site. And a stiff undertaking for that to take place. I am deeply sympathetic to the concerns raised by the speakers in terms of the proliferation of sites around, other Gypsy and Traveller sites around that area. I do accept that there is probably a need for more accommodation for Gypsies and Travellers, and I have great sympathy with that need, but it has to be weighed against the need of the existing residents and also the impacts that can happen when these sites are not regulated properly. I mean, the two sites I mentioned, Veer Meadow and Cherry Trees, are in fact managed by Hertfordshire County Council. Now, if a county council is not able to effectively manage those sites, then what guarantees do we have that that site as it is, which seems innocuous, would stay innocuous? And I will not be voting for this application.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, if I can come back on that, obviously you've got condition 1 attached to the permission that sets out quite clearly that the site can only be occupied as a single pitch and shall have no more than 2 caravans under the Caravan Sites and Controlled Development Act and the Caravan Sites Act 1968, stationed at any one time. So that's quite clear as to the extent of development that can be on the site. The site hereby approved shall also not be occupied by other than people, gypsies and travellers as defined in the planning policy guidance under condition 2. So I think those 2 conditions are pretty robust in terms of the scale of activity, or as robust as we feasibly could be at an application stage.
Phil.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of raise a word of caution in terms of making a decision based on potential stereotypical perceptions of the gypsy and traveller community. Obviously, in terms of the point of a management plan and compare it, this is a very different proposal to Cherry Trees Lane. It's a single, as I understand it, Robert can correct me if I'm wrong, kind of a single family pitch proposal. Is that correct, Robert? Yeah. So we would not insist on a management plan for a single bricks and mortar dwelling family proposal. So we just need to obviously make sure that the considerations are on the facts and merits of the case and not on perceptions of the gypsy and traveller community.
Thank you, Philip. The next speaker is Councillor Bromham and then Councillor Guest.
Yeah, we've heard, I think that there are multiple risers, but we've just heard that there's a limit on 2 caravans. Maybe we can clarify that. But this is not for a house building. It's specifically for the gypsies and travellers accommodation, which, although a static caravan seems like pretty much like a permanent dwelling, really. But some of the conditions under that core strategy 22, dealing with the new accommodation for gypsies and travellers, is that it allows for part occupation initially, allowing subsequent growth to full site capacity. And it should be designed to a high standard. And there's been comments about the cesspits not being appropriate. And I'm wondering whether that would be permitted if it was just a normal house. And also, it says that there should be a open frontage similar to other forms of housing. And is that in place?
Policy CS22, as you're probably aware, prioritise the provision of sites that are defined on the proposals map. But other proposals coming forward will need to be judged on the basis of need. And it's very much that basis of need that we are pursuing a recommendation in this case. The site has reasonable access to the main transport network. I appreciate it's not to the M1 or A41 main roads, as is under policy 22, but it will minimise potential disturbance to adjoining occupiers as well, purely through the result of its scale. So I think where we're coming to on this one is that policy 22 has slightly been superseded in terms of the MPPF requirements, in terms of housing and gypsy and traveller housing. Ideally, you'd have larger traveller pitches, but we do need to consider each application for traveller pitches on its own merits, and this proposal is perfectly acceptable under that policy basis, particularly with regard to the MPPF and the strong provision, as you say, in terms of housing need and grey belt sites. So I think logically, the grey belt policy in the MPPF has the most material weight in the decision, and this is obviously in accordance with that. You do need to obviously factor in as well that under the tilted back paragraph 11 of the MPPF, we are subject to a tilted balance, both in terms of housing need, which does extend to gypsy and traveller provision as well. So the tilted balance is enacted, So unless you've got substantial and demonstrable harm outweighing the benefits of the development, in this instance, you should be recommending approval for it under the MPPF.
Thank you, Robert. Councillor Guest, thank you for being so patient.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, we heard in the presentations by speakers, there was concern as to whether the road in question would be basically big enough for caravans. And I see that in the responses to consultation, there was also a comment that the width of the road and the sweep of the road wouldn't be wide enough. I've looked in the highways comments, and they don't mention the width and the sweep of the road. They just mention the volume of traffic which can be accommodated on the surrounding highway network, the access, and the hard standing and the parking. So, is it a material planning consideration, the width and sweep of the road, basically, so whether the road could take the caravans?
It is obviously a material consideration in terms of provision of access to the site. Again, I would reiterate that under the highways comments, we've no specific objection or indeed comment in relation to whether there was insufficient width to get a caravan in and around and onto that site. From my site visit, it's not a straightforward manoeuvre to get a caravan onto the site, but I've no doubt that it is feasible to be capable of being achieved. And that obviously is where we sit in terms of the manoeuvres. Bearing in mind that Green Lane itself is not subject to particularly heavy traffic, and the scale of movements is very limited as well. I think you'd be struggling to demonstrate that it was harmful to highway safety to try and manoeuvre a caravan into that site.
Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll keep it brief. If I'm looking at this correctly, we have one static caravan and we have one touring caravan. So in effect, we have two properties that could be occupied at any one time. If the touring caravan goes on holiday, will the other caravan, the static one, be left vacant? Or are we looking at two properties being occupied all the time? I'm mindful of Philip Stanley's comments earlier. Thank you.
Yeah, so the proposal is effectively for a single family. Obviously, it would be entirely down to the family as to how they holiday effectively. Whether you're leaving the children at home or whether you're going or as a family on holiday. I don't believe that that's material to the determination of this case. We've got to view it as a single pitch effectively and make judgments accordingly.
Thank you. Are there any further comments to be made? Right, okay. Is this where we move to the vote? Do I have a proposer for officer's recommendation? Yeah, I think Councillor Guest got there first and Councillor Hobson second. Thank you. Can I have a show of hands, those in favour of officer's recommendation with any conditions here? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 in favour. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 4 in favour, 5 against. Right. I'm weighing this up. 4 and 5, right. Right. Do you have any councillors who have abstained? 1 abstention there, right. I think I'll abstain on this one as well. Substitutions. So 4 in favour, 5 against, 2 abstentions. So officers' recommendation has failed. In terms of determining reasons for objection, can we have proposals for reasons for objection?
Yep, I'm sorry, I'm waiting for the councillors in the first instance.
Councillor Smith-Wright.
Harm to rural character.
Policy, would that come under?
Chair, can I, while Caroline's looking that up, under the core strategy 22, I query that it is designed to a high standard and also that it has an open frontage similar to other forms of housing.
So that's contrary to policy 22, basically.
Yes.
Anything else that's substantial? Have we got a policy which is harmful to the rural area?
Can I just clarify in terms of harm to rural character? The follow-up question to that would be by virtue of what? What aspect of the development causes harm to the rural character?
It would harm the intrinsic character of the area and beauty of the countryside.
But what aspect of the development causes harm to the intrinsic beauty of the area and the countryside?
It's out of character. I mean, listening to the debate, the concerns have focused on, there was some concerns about the concentration raised by members in of Gypsy and Traveller sites in the area. And policy CS22 also talks about distributed in a dispersed pattern. There's also been some, there's also concerns raised in terms of highways impact, but a considerable word of caution there is the lack of objection from the Highways Authority. The other points mentioned by Councillor Bromham in respect of not effectively meeting the high quality design aspects of policy CS22.
I'm not, I don't know, Robert, if you want to comment on the out of character aspects. Is it the same? Yeah, in terms of out of character, we, in the event of any appeal, the council needs to be mindful that we would be drilled by the planning inspector in terms of the detail behind the reason for refusal. So in terms of out of character, we have a stable building, which is inherently rural in character, albeit slightly different compared to the approved permission. We have hard standing that extends slightly to the north, but in officer's view has little visual impact. And there are then the two caravans, which are of a scale the officers would argue couldn't be considered out of character. So it's certainly officer's recommendation that we wouldn't go down that particular avenue. It seems to me that members have been mindful of policy CES 22 and the need for new sites to be designed to a high standard. In particular, that policy CES 22 EI. So that, based on the debate that we've had, appears to be the sole reason for refusal.
Yes, so one of the difficulties that I have on this one is that new sites, little a, distributed in a dispersed pattern around settlements. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, wasn't it mentioned that the site isn't big enough really for a horse in the first place? I mean, you need, what, an acre for a horse? And how big is this site? It just seems if you can't get a horse on the site, why do you need a stable?
If I may,
Unless
Chair,
the horses that live in the stable will never go outside, which I think the RSPCA would want to look at. But anyway, I don't know. I just think we're missing the main core of the discussion, which is the stable and the land for a horse.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. What I would advise caution on is that we've obviously approved a stable in that location.
Well, they can go back on their previous application then. I mean, we're not discussing the old application, we're discussing this one. And I just think that it should be mentioned that if we're, we need something put on a piece of paper, the ground isn't big enough to put the horse in. It shouldn't be missed last time, but I am uncomfortable with other aspects of it.
My concern is that it would be unreasonable behaviour for the council to refuse permission to grant a stable on the basis of a lack of grazing land where we've already approved a stable. But
it's a mishap.
The other aspect of the adequacy for the equestrian function was the hard standing in front of the stable block that would not be suitable for horses. And it is possible, I don't know whether that was part of the previous application, but to have that, that gravel, or whether that's just been put down since.
Right. Yeah, well, if we go back to the plan, obviously there was hard standing gravel approved, albeit not to the same extent to the north of the stables, but nevertheless right outside the stable building we have approved a gravel finish as well, which obviously makes things quite difficult in terms of a reason.
I'm not an equestrian, but there's nothing to stop people having equestrian facilities and then hiring or renting fields nearby to be able to accommodate their horses.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems that we've, there are three potential reasons that members have discussed. One is policy CS22A. New sites will be distributed in a dispersed pattern around settlements, and there's been concerns raised about concentration between Markyate and Dunstable. Officers are not, so officers would have concerns about all three reasons for refusal, but in terms of saying that this development results in a concentration of Gypsy and Traveller pitches, I think may be hard to justify. There's policy CS22E, designed to a high standard with an open frontage similar to other forms of housing. I guess it depends on the definition or what constitutes an open frontage. And then the third reason is that the some aspect of the development causes harm to the intrinsic beauty of the area and the character and appearance of the countryside. But as I say, unless we kind of drill down specifically and say what aspect of the development causes that harm, again, officers would not recommend that reason for refusal. Ultimately, it's for members to decide which of those three or combination of. But also, it's the officer's view that obviously all three are quite difficult to sustain, but in particular, the impact on the character and appearance of the area would be very difficult to defend.
I'd go on from that, if I may, and say that even if there is harm that can be demonstrated as a result of this proposal, I'm not satisfied that that is demonstrable, that's significantly demonstrable to outweigh the benefits of a Gypsy and Traveller site in this location, bearing in mind the Gypsy and Traveller needs assessment that's come through the plan. So again, I don't think harm is necessarily sufficient in its own right. I think we need substantial harm in this instance.
Right. Thank you for that, Robert. And again, caution on this one, because the definition of the green belt vis-a-vis grey belt, I think is quite strong here. We couldn't defend it on green belt grounds.
Does the condition 1 that was recommended, that the development approved shall be occupied only as a single pitch with no more than 2 caravans, 1 static and 1 touring, does that override the core strategy requirement that the site should be filled to its maximum capacity?
only if you view the site as being suitable for accommodating more than one traveller pitch, which obviously, given the shape, size and nature of that site, I would strongly move away from obviously intensifying any use of that site for gypsy and traveller provision.
Can I just reiterate? I think having listened to officers as well, I'm quite concerned that it seems that we're saying we don't like this and then trying to retrofit that with a policy, and I'm concerned about potential appeals and just going down that route if we don't have a a justifiable policy reason to go against it. Yet we had 5 members that went against the officer recommendation. So just a word of caution from my end and my observation. Thank you.
Philip.
Yeah, thank you. And perhaps in that regard, there are some questions being raised where potentially officers could come back with additional information. So in respect of the design to a high standard with that open frontage, yeah, so there could be an opportunity to provide more information and reassurance to members in respect of the high standard of the proposals and how it would meet policy CS22EI, and also potentially an opportunity to amend the scheme if that's possible to achieve those aims. In terms of policy CS22A, a fuller understanding of the existing concentration of gypsy and traveller sites in the locality, and to generate a more firmed up OSA view on that. So there is potentially a need here to defer the item to give the opportunity for members to have that full information. There's also, Robert has, which paragraph? 8.52.
Yes, paragraph 8.52 indicates that the applicants have personal circumstances which they consider to be very special circumstances as well, which they obviously haven't divulged at this stage, given that the officer recommendation was that it wasn't inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. So obviously that would need to be factored into the balance as well.
So overall, there's the if members feel that the reasons why they were not able to grant the application is because there's aspects of the development that they need more information about, it would be open to members to defer the application to receive that information.
Thank you. Councillor Smith-Wright.
Thank you. Can I refer back to my question about highways and my concern that that road, Old Watling Street, is being planned to be shut? And I am still very concerned that we are making a decision without that very important piece of information about access. And I appreciate, I would like to know when you got highways, when highways actually reported to you, because I know, being the county councillor, I am across highways, and this has come across my desk, so I'm completely aware of it. And I just wonder, when did highways comment on this application?
Right. Cutting across this, I think from the previous comment from Mr. Stanley, I think we're at the stage where we are floundering around on solid reasons for an objection. I suggest that we consider deferring this and ask for additional information to include the comment that you've made about closing the Old Watling highways, as well as dispersal, as well as these very special circumstances. Is that a fair summary of where we're at?
Thank you, Chairman. This question is really to Phil and Lillian. Then it's been suggested that we defer the item to get more information, but considering that a vote has been taken, so where do we stand on that procedurally?
I don't know whether that's more a question for legal in terms of DMC procedures.
Can I suggest that essentially what we have done in the first part of the vote was to vote down officer's recommendation. We can't alight on a strong enough reason for refusal. We can't come to an agreement on something that the officers will be able to support should we go to appeal. And there might be circumstances, very special circumstances, to update us on why we should approve this application. If it comes back to us with amendments, then I think we treat it as a new application.
Just one final point. Obviously, as this application, I understand, is beyond its statutory period of determination, if it is deferred, it would be open for appeal under non-determination. We obviously don't know how the applicant would react to a deferral. We would hope the applicant would see this as an opportunity to provide that additional information to reassure members. But I just felt it prudent to advise members that there is that potential.
Mr. Bromley.
For further information as well, the potential increase in development of that site, it does appear from the map that the site is considerably larger than the site that's actually been applied for. There's, the majority of the site is not really shown as part of that development. And so we need clarification on how much further development is possible or likely or permitted.
I think it just adds to the complication. Robert?
Yeah, I don't think we're in a position to speculate on additional development. Obviously, we've got to determine the application on its own merits as put before members, but we will take that point away.
Right. Can I have a proposer to defer this application? Councillor Allen. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Allen. Have a seconder to defer? Councillor Janowski. Right. Can I have a show of hands to defer? In favour? Those in favour of deferral? Show of hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 in favour. Those against deferral? 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 against deferral. 5 against, okay. No. Any abstentions? Councillor Guest is abstaining. Okay, right. This is where I'm going to exercise the chairman's prerogative. I'm going to vote in favour of deferral, and I'll use my second vote for that. No, I'm voting twice. Okay. So we're going to defer, and you're going to come back with further amendments, further information. Okay. Right, Joan, I think this is where we move on to the next one. We're into 5C, and this is going to be presented by Joan Reid. Extension and internal alterations to existing front of building to form 3 dwellings and a replacement. 19 to 21 High Street, Markyate. Joan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The application in front of us tonight is as described. It has an objection from Markyate Parish Council. Next slide, please. So I'll run you through some of the site descriptions of the site. You see the site outlined in red. It is onto the High Street in Markyate, and you'll see the Old Dunstable Road behind. The application is redevelopment of a previously developed site. It has some history. An application for 5 dwellings was refused. So this is an amended scheme that we're considering tonight. Next slide, please. So members will see the existing building on the site. It's the former E.J. Smith hardware store. You'll also see the bus stop on the High Street and some of the residential buildings, which I'll go through in a second, adjacent to the site. Please note also the landscape buffer towards the back of the site, separating the site and the main road. Thanks, Elspeth. So moving through some of the slides, it gives members a greater appreciation of the existing building, which is to be redeveloped. We'll move on to some of the elevations, and you'll see the extensions coming, bringing the building further forward towards the footpath. Next slide, please. And as we move to the left-hand side of the site, you'll see number 17 and 19 High Street. Next slide, please. And here in between number 17 and the application site, you'll see the existing access which serves the site. There's an existing crossover onto the High Street, and this is the route which is to serve the development. Next slide, please. As we glance further up the High Street, you'll see the site on the left-hand side, and members will see the context in which the scheme relates. Next slide, please. This photograph is now sitting inside of the site. You'll see the application building in front of us, and to the right-hand side, which is the old barn, which is to be demolished as part of this scheme. This is the positioning, if you'd like, of the 2, I'm calling them Muse buildings, the 2 dwellings to the rear of the site. Next slide, please. And again, another aspect of the application site, it's obviously all boarded up at the minute. And you'll see the rear of the site, if you'd like. Beyond that is the trees and the Dunstable Road. Next slide, please. The site actually is in quite a bad state at the minute, and we would consider it as a brownfield site. Here's the existing plans. You'll see the building that we've referred to, but also the scale and siting of the old barn to the rear. Next slide, please. And flicking through some of the existing floor plans. Next slide, please. And the existing elevations of the front building. Next slide, please. This is the proposed layout of the scheme. So in the front, we have 3 terraced buildings, and we note that they come forward to meet the footpath. To the rear, you have perpendicular to that, a separate building comprising 2 3-bedroom dwellings. Each property has, albeit small, its own amenity space. There's 8 car parking spaces unallocated to serve the development as a whole. And you'll note some of the communal and landscaping space as well. Next slide, please. Moving through, these are the proposed elevations of the High Street or the front building. You'll see it has been extended. It now features kind of a triple gable set down on the rear elevation. Next slide, please. And the floor plans of, sorry, they're in the wrong order, the floor plans of the rear building. So I've just mentioned they're 2 3-bedroom properties. Next slide, please. And the elevations of those. And this is a section through the site. Ultimately, it shows the front building as extended in context to the residential neighbours at the top. And then you'll see a section showing, if you like, the relationships between the front building and the rear mews buildings. So it's very hard to see, but what it's showing is that a line drawn at 25 degrees from 2 meters from the bottom windows isn't in breach of the roof of the rear building. So adequate amenity and visibility can be achieved. Next slide, please. Turning to, I think this is the last slide. I just wanted to add, in addition to the addendum and on reflection, I seek to add another condition which seeks to ask for details of sustainable surface drainage on the site. This is mindful to the high infiltration of the site, levels of the site, just to ensure that we can appease adequate sustainable drainage systems if the application is found to be acceptable.
Thank you, John. Right, on 5C, we have a number of speakers, 2 in objection, 1 in support. Parish Councillor Hackey, over to you.
With regards to this site, the original objections to this development consisting of 5 3-storey homes is that this is an overdevelopment of the site, given its size and the lack of parking. The site is situated to the north end of the High Street in a conservation area. The Council's guidelines on such development state new build should be of a scale and proportion sympathetic to the surrounding area in terms of form, height and overall character. The proposed plans do not adhere to this, considering the height and number of the properties proposed. Despite the officer's report stating the reasons for previous refusals have been addressed, we feel this is incorrect, with a number of issues still remaining unchanged. The report states that some issues have been resolved when they have not, including the Conservation and Design Officer stating that 2-storey buildings are uncharacteristic of the conservation area and the ridge heights are too high. This has not been addressed on all the properties. The officer's report, part 10.18, also states the form and scale have been amended. Again, they have not. The lack of parking facilities are extremely insufficient for Markyate's needs. The High Street is dangerously congested with traffic and parked cars parking permanently or down one side of the road, effectively rendering it a 1-lane High Street. Cars are frequently damaged with vehicles trying to pass each other and having to mount the pavements. It's an extremely dangerous manoeuvre considering the extreme narrow pavements. The parking survey is 2 years out of date and severely undercounts the parking spaces available. Indeed, Albert Street, just off of the High Street, residents are now having to reverse either in or out of the road due to parked cars blocking any turning space. The Transport Assessment Plan is again 1.5 years out of date. It states in section 3.4, walking and cycling, there are several food and drink premises. To verify, there are 2 small convenience stores, along with a bakery. Others are made up of takeaway, restaurants and public houses, none of which are suitable for weekly grocery shopping. It states that there are 2 schools. We have 1 primary school. Buses do run through the village, but unreliable, with issues of them completely driving past the village and not turning into Markyate at all. Even when adhering to their route, the buses are not regular enough to use for work and school runs alike. There are no buses in the village on Sundays or bank holidays. To have your own transport is a necessity in the village, a genuine need and not a luxury. Next to the site is Flowerdale, a row of historic cottages situated and accessed along a narrow footpath with the fronts directly facing onto this development. If approved, the new properties will have a negative effect on these cottages, blocking natural light. The parish accepts that the land will be developed.
Time's up, I'm afraid. Councillor Timmis, over to you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Once again, as Borough Councillor for Watling Ward, I wish to support the Parish Council's objection to this development. I would principally object on the grounds of overdevelopment. which, given the location on Markyate High Street, also impacts hugely on the present major problems with parking. There is insufficient car parking on the development site itself. This is not something that one can dismiss with the climate change and environment hats on. I need to remind everyone that Markyate is a village that has little public transport that can be used to go to work, school or hospital. The conservation area mainly comprises of homes that are 17th, 18th, 19th century with no garages or off-site parking. This is particularly true on the high street, which is burdened by too many cars on a narrow main street through the village. Add to the fact that the village on either side of the high street is generally on a hill. Walking or cycling anywhere is not always that easy. So the car continues to be all important. This development would add to the already overcrowded car parking. I just need to add quickly here that I can hardly believe when those photos of the high street were taken with so few cars being seen. It's very unusual. The development itself is just cramming in houses which have a pocket handkerchief of a garden each, hardly helpful for well-being. And so I'm not against the idea of this site being developed. It needs to be, but it's just overdevelopment. The previous application was turned down, but the ensuing modifications have made little difference to the impact on the surrounding houses, because whatever has been done does not get away from the fact that this is overdevelopment. Although not strictly a planning issue, Japanese knotweed has been seen growing on the site. This can have a disastrous effect on foundations and tarmac surfaces and will impact on mortgage grants. It needs a 5-year treatment plan to get rid of it. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Right, and we have a speaker in support, Mr. Seabrook.
Chair, good evening. Oh, I do apologise, that's rather loud. Members of the committee, good evening. I'm Julian Seabrook, the agent for the applicant in this case. As the officer report highlights, the proposals at this site before you tonight not only make very effective use of a brownfield previously developed site to provide desperately needed new modern family housing stock for the area, as we are all directed to do so by the government, but does so in this very sustainable location and to greatly improve the character of the conservation area. The front of the site facing onto the high street currently contains a very plain and unattractive post-war 2-storey building, as advised, formerly a hardware store, with residential accommodation already above. This building is laid out entirely at odds with the prevailing street scene and urban grain of the village and the character of the conservation area. And the rear of the site contains, as you have seen, a dilapidated storage unit building. The proposals for the site provide for extending the frontage building forwards and allowing a new street scene design to be built entirely in keeping with prevailing architecture and reinstates the general and traditional building line along the high street of the village. This extended building will provide 3 new 3-bedroom family homes over 2 stories with loft space, not 3 stories as has been advised. The dilapidated storage building to the rear of the site is to be demolished entirely and rebuilt at the lowest level of the site and will again provide 2 further 3-bedroom family homes and again over 2 stories plus loft only. The rear elevation of those buildings are more than 20 metres away from the frontage of the cottages adjacent. All 5 homes have their own private gardens and off-street parking provision justified due to the sustainable location of this site. There are no technical objections from statutory consultees, and we have worked with the local authority planning and conservation officers to satisfactorily resolve any of the previous issues arising. Again, contrary to what has been stated by Parish. We therefore kindly commend this application for your consideration and kind approval. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for keeping well to time. Right, members, over to you. Comments?
Thank you. I do have concerns over the amenity space. I mean, overall, I think it's quite a good design. The street scene, it does seem to have sort of it's extending cottages. But I do happen to know this area very well. I grew up near here, and I would agree with the comments on the lack of parking. I am concerned about the lack of parking in a very congested area. I would dispute that it's a sustainable location. I don't think it has a sustainable bus or public transport service. And I think, as most villages these days, people will be using their cars. So for me, it has at least one dwelling too many, given the amount of space that you have for car parking. It's a balanced argument on that. I mean, the gardens, I think, in my opinion, are too small, but it's a balanced argument whether that's a strong enough argument to turn it down. But my biggest concerns are the lack of sufficient parking provision in this location, and that's the thing that concerns me most. I don't know if the officer has anything that they can comment on that, about the strength of that argument, but it does concern me. It does make me think that we've possibly got one dwelling too many in this location. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to come back. I do understand, obviously, the pressures in Markyate. I think one of the members, Councillor Timmis, mentioned about what time the photographs. I visited the site yesterday about 3:30, 4:45. You know, and children are coming out of school, and I understand the pressures on Markyate. The previous scheme that was refused had slightly more parking, but there was tandem parking and various different things. With this scheme, I think it's another scheme that members need to apply the tilted balance to, and the harm of not meeting, in this case, 9 unallocated car parking spaces to meet our adopted parking SPD, and only achieving 8 spaces is the loss as per this, you know, 1 space as per our standards that we can ask for. I appreciate obviously the concerns that are raised in terms of Markyate. You know, there's some amenities there. There's certainly walking distance from this site, being on the high street. There's a bus stop. Earlier, I appreciate the comments from the parish council in respect of you know, reliability and frequency of that service. But I think, you know, based on our 5-year land supply and the harm in delivering a brownfield site on the high street in a reasonably sustainable location, you know, it's difficult balance if we keep giving the car parking spaces through every application. There's very little encouragement for people to get on those buses to help with demand. I think one of the comments from the parish council was that if there's nobody picking up or dropped off, the bus sometimes doesn't go through. So, you know, it's a difficult balance. I appreciate that. On this particular scheme, where changes have been made to help satisfy some of the concerns, it's certainly office's recommendation based on need here and presumption in favour of sustainable development to recommend approval.
I think, if I may, Chair, I think the tilted balance kills us on quite a lot of these insufficient, less than satisfactory developments, because we don't have the land supply and we're struggling. So I do get that argument, but yeah, I'll just have to have a think about it and see what other people say. But this is going to cause problems. Just one quick question, actually. These being unallocated, are they just residents only, or can anyone park there? Because if it's a completely free-for-all parking, then that's just going to cause. I know that's probably not a material planning application, but I just know how much of a problem this will cause, and I actually do respectfully disagree with your comments on sustainable location. It's not. Thank you.
Notwithstanding what we have on the screen, Councillor Jankowski got in the queue early without pressing the button.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson slightly stole my question on parking. But I did have another question just around the affordable housing. The Parish Council objection notes the Parish Council continues to be against infilling on principle, despite what they've said they're happy for the site, they want the site to be developed. But they would like to see affordable housing included in multi-dwelling developments. What's the in relation to affordable in this instance?
If I reply, in terms of national policies, we are not capable. There's no policy for us to ask for affordable housing on this site being less than 10 units or of a site area of this size.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Chairman. I get it about the tilted balance. I get it about the parking standards SPD. Now, under the parking standards SPD, that we're one parking space short. And of the two considerations, the tilted balance and the parking standards SPD, then which should be given the more weight?
My advice would be the tilted balance. The need for small family homes over achieving.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'd like to notify you that I'm County Councillor Markyate, but I've not come across this before, and I will proceed with an open mind. Thank you. Yes, everything that's been said before, parking is, being the County Council of Markyate, I'm fully aware of the difficulty in parking. It's an ancient village. Buses struggle to get through, they're unreliable, they don't turn up, and we are, again, reliant on our cars in this rural village. There are, I think, probably, as Councillor Hobson says, one too many dwellings here. I'm not against this development, but I think that there are too many and there are not enough spaces. So that would be my main criticism. Thank you.
I have, it is intentional, sometimes it's not, but it is. I didn't get an answer to my question about whether the unallocated parking is going to be the residents only.
I'm not aware that it's not specified as part of the planning application. Certainly, if that was a particular concern, we could seek to have that specified.
Have it as a condition, because I think it just wouldn't be a work. And then as people were talking, and you mentioned tandem, and I'm not a fan of tandem parking at all. But given the pressure that we're under the tilted balance, given the location, is it feasible? And I know we have to look at what's in front of us, but there's grass areas behind. I think it's parking 5 and 4 and 7 and 6, if my eyes are right. There's grass behind those two. Is there room for 2 more spaces that could be tandem parking, or at least can we? Yeah, I don't know what we can do about that, because I know we have to go with what's in front of us. But if there is, I mean, a strong recommendation for me that if this was to go forward, it needs, if you can squeeze more parking in there. And I think tandem, as much as I dislike tandem parking, if this was to go ahead, that's better than just the spaces that we've got because of the pressures.
Councillor Hubbard, and I'm just thinking on my feet, because you asked about a condition on allocated parking. I'm just thinking it's probably not going to meet the tests for us to condition who can park where, if that makes sense. We can't control what individuals do in planning law. What I could ask for a condition is particular signs and deterrents for other people parking there, if that makes sense, so that as part of a plan or in place that it's clear that those spaces are for the residents only. Returning to your question on getting more parking, it would be within the member's gift to change the officer's recommendation, which is to vote in favour of the application subject to the UU and the condition that I mentioned, but also to enable officers to go off and seek an alternative plan that meets our policies and meets adequate turn-in spaces and space and so on, but to achieve that additional parking. Obviously, the the concern is would be to the detriment, if you like, of some of the landscaping spaces and so on and so forth. But if that was something that members felt particularly strongly about, we could take this away and work with the developer to see if we can achieve that minimum of 9 car parking spaces on the site, and then seek to determine it favourably if it meets otherwise policies.
I would, if this was to go ahead with the tilted balance, with the tilted balance, the pressure that we're under the tilted balance, that tiny bit of landscaping, given its location, the trees and the fields are very nearby, I think you could potentially sacrifice the landscaping. Personal view, but I would be very open to that. Thank you.
I think the agent is here tonight, so he's nodding that he's not opposed to that suggestion.
Just make it sensible.
Thank you, Chairman. The big concern I had was the shortfall of parking. Because I too know what Markyate High Street is like, and just how constrained it is for parking. So with the delegation with a view to approval, to include being subject to an alternative parking plan to achieve 9 car parking spaces, I propose the officer recommendation to delegate with a view to approval. But Chairman, if you excuse the term, you might want to park that in case there are any other speakers.
May I come in? In addition to that, to the condition, also to the condition asking for those parking spaces to be for the residents of that development only.
Indeed.
We'll park your proposal there for the moment. We've got Councillor Allen and Councillor Bromham wanting to speak.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to explore this loft disagreement. Did I see somewhere that there are going to be some roof lights in the loft space?
Yes, I think maybe the previous scheme, apologies, I did have the plans of the previous scheme and they didn't save. I think possibly the reference might be to the dormer windows in the 2 rear dwellings. There was also roof lights to the front building along the high street that have also been omitted now. You do have roof lights on the rear elevation of the 2 back buildings and to the rear of the front building. That makes sense.
So these loft spaces are going to have light, natural light through roof lights, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And what about the stairs arrangement and, are there stairs going up into the loft space? Are there fire doors? All the sorts of things that would suggest that these are easily converted into being a 3-storey occupancy building, even though on plan it doesn't suggest that it is intended at this stage.
Is the concern that there'd be more bedrooms?
Oh, my concern is that if there's stairways up to the loft and there's roof lights and whatever other building regulation requirements are needed for a top story to be occupied, then this space, whilst currently nominally 2-storey, has got all the makings of being easily converted into a 3-storey house with very little trouble. Is that the case?
I would sort of question why we're concerned about that. Is the concern that if the use of that loft space was for another additional bedroom?
Okay, well, I'll move to a different angle, which is I've been up and down the high street a couple of times on Google Street View, and it seems to me that there are very, very few 3-storey properties on Markyate High Street. The majority of the houses are detached or spacious attached houses with 2 bays. And I would suggest that this development is not in keeping with the street scene. And I have grave concerns about the density of the development, as Councillor Hobson has brought up, but for different reasons. I suppose that's a statement rather than a question.
I think if I can come back on that, and I completely understand the concern, I think, Elspeth, if you were to take the slide back to perhaps the aerial view. Or even the photographs, or looking at the aerial view, I mean, the site obviously dips down quite substantially as you come from the high street into the site. You can see the existing barn building already in position. You've got kind of a variety, I suppose, of buildings next to it. And then perpendicular, you've got the cottages. And I think, you know, obviously the residents and the local councils will know the streetscape of Markyate far better than I do, but I would say that there is quite a variety within Markyate in terms of form and character and layout of buildings. And obviously there's forms of backland development and all kinds of applications. I've even had an application granted an appeal on backland development at 64 High Street, Markyate. And inspectors agree in that form of development was not out of kilter with the character of Markyate. In terms of height, you know, it's a typical roof on the building. You know, you can see there, obviously, the existing building and the height of it and the shape and roof of the form shape and roof form, I should say. You know, I think if there's particular concerns, that's fine, but we would have to obviously quantify what those concerns are, either in context of surroundings or, you know, if the impact is such that that could be used as a bedroom, what's the impact of that?
Okay, well, I think we'll have to maybe disagree on that. I do think that it has a significant impact. On the parking, the other thing I would like to point out that if these properties are truly designed for you know, younger people to be able to move into the area, then you know, most younger family units depend on 2 income earners and 2 commuters, and therefore I think the parking is actually a real concern. That if you're building houses that require people to own cars, I mean, I get the point about, well, you've got to deny people the access to parking to stimulate the buses, but that's a bit of a long-term objective, and in the short term, you've got a family that's going to struggle to, or a household that is going to struggle to have sufficient parking for their needs.
Councillor Bromham.
Yeah, coming back to the amount of sort of hard-standing space in general, I'm not sure if there's space for bins there. I couldn't really find that on the the drawings provided. I've seen how congested the high street gets, and public transport has not been rolling out as quickly as we would hope. We desperately want to reduce the amount of cars on the road, but for the time being, we have to, you know, we have problems with cars parking all over the pavement, and people can't get along the pavements then. So across the borough, we've got a parking solutions where we're converting verges and amenity space into car parking at the moment.
Councillor Bromham, can we focus on Markyate's problems?
Yes. Well, I think this is common to the whole borough, and I also have a concern that the residents, these have been defined as unallocated spaces, but the residents may insist on them becoming allocated, which would leave a shortfall then of 3 parking spaces. So I echo my colleagues' statements that there might be a shortage of parking there.
Thank you. Any further comments? If there are not, we've got a proposal for officer's recommendation subject to the changes, the additional conditions from Councillor Guest. Do I have a seconder for right, Councillor Durrant? Can I have a show of hands, those in favour of officer's recommendation with the amendments to the conditions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that right? 8? Do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Against? 1 against, 10. I'm abstaining. So officer's recommendation is carried with the amendments to the conditions as we discussed. Thank you. Thank you, John. As it's now 9:25, it's long past the time when we would have a break at 9 o'clock. Can I suggest we come back, do you want 10 minutes or 5 minutes? 10 minutes, 25 to 10. Right. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, can I suggest that we crack on? Right, the next item on the agenda is item 5D. And this is construction of two new two-bedroom dwellings in the yard, Chapelcroft, Chipperfield, Kings Langley. Joan, over to you again.
Thank you, Chair. As mentioned, it's for two new bedroom dwellings. The application is in front of us. It has an objection from the Parish Council. I would also, I'll say it now, like to change recommendation to ask for a obligation also to be inserted into the proposed unilateral undertaking to include obligations for those dwellings to be self-built. This is obviously necessary given the BNG exemption that has been availed of, if you'd like, and I'd like to control that through the 106 that we're seeking, which will also seek to secure the SAM and SANG, which is the Habitats Regulation mitigation. Okay, thanks, Elspeth. I'll move through the slides. So members will see in the red line the application site. To the north is Tulip Close, which is a reasonably new development, and to the south is Chapelcroft. You've got a number of residential developments to the left and to the right of the site. The Tulip Close is a private own access, which is the access sought for the northern house, if you'd like, and then access for the southern house is to be taken from Chapelcroft to the south. Next slide. And it's just a closer look of the red line. I should have drawn members' attention to the Chipperfield Conservation Area, which is about 50 metres south of the site along Chapelcroft. The site itself isn't within the conservation area, but there is potential for any development within it to affect the setting. Next slide, please. So you'll see on the red line, there's a number of containers and a garage on the site. Actually, I visited yesterday and the site is cleared. The site has a lawful use as a storage use on the site. We would consider it as brownfield. It sits within the village designation of Chipperfield. Next slide, please. And these are the layout plans of the proposal. You've got two chalet bungalow dwellings proposed, each with 2 car parking spaces. They've got separate accesses as discussed. Each has its own private amenity space, measuring just shy of 11 metres. I think they're 10 point something or other there. And the roof, if you'd like, is utilised for the bedroom space upstairs. Next slide, please. Here are the elevations of the proposals. You'll see the simple design. You'll see the roof lights inserted in the roof. The dwellings measure approximately 6 metres in width and 11 metres the length of them, which is probably useful to mention that they do look small on plan, but they're perfectly adequate as small family homes. Next slide, please. Moving quickly through some of the floor plans. Next slide, please. And the 2 bedrooms contained within the roof space. Next slide, please. 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 Okay, turn into photographs. Here, if you'd like, is a view of the site from Chapel Close. We talked about some of the more recent developments adjacent. I think we've got Rembrandt Place and the houses behind. And you'll see from the red arrow is roughly where, if you like, the Chapelcroft entrance of the site is. Next slide, please. And a closer view from the Chapel Croft entrance, you'll see the bungalow to the left-hand side of the site, referred to as the, apologies, the new bungalow, I think it is. So the site entrance, if you'd like, is just behind where you'll see the red little sign on that pole. Next slide, please. And that's a closer view. Next slide, please. And I'm standing in the site, looking up the spans of the site here, and you'll see the properties of Tulip Close, if you like, behind. Next slide, please. And now I'm standing in Tulip Close, and you'll see the containers that I've referred to, and this is the point of access to the front of Building B, which is the new dwelling to the north of the site. Next slide, please. And again, just to get members' sort of orientation here, the site is kind of perpendicular or going to the left-hand side of that red arrow. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's some, if you'd like, context of the site altogether. The new bungalow is right. Chapel Croft to the left-hand side, and then with the new bungalow next to it. So the site there is just to the right-hand side beyond that fence. And then again, looking from the other aspect of Tulip Close, members will see where it is. Okay. So we'll finish up with the layout plan of the application. I think it's worth letting members know that there was a previous application submitted for 2, albeit bigger, dwellings on the site, which was withdrawn. And then an application was approved, I think January of last year, for 1 dwelling on the site, kind of off Chapel Croft. So this is an amended scheme now for 2, albeit smaller, 2-bedroom dwellings across the full length of the site. That's it from me.
Thank you, John. All right.
Chairman, before we proceed, I must make a declaration that the applicant is known to me and he has done some roofing work for me. I have not discussed this application with him and come to it with an open mind.
Thank you for that declaration. Councillor Walker, I think, wants to say something similar.
Yes, I am the ward councillor for Bobbin, Chipperfield and Flaundon. And so is my colleague, Councillor Riddick. I haven't been involved with this, haven't discussed it, and we've both come to that in mind.
Councillor Bryant is here to speak in objection. He's parish councillor at Chipperfield.
Good evening, councillors, officers, staff. I admire your patience and fortitude this evening in this lengthy meeting. Chipperfield Parish Council objects firstly for the lack of proven access rights to the 1 dwelling off of Tulip Close. And secondly, inadequate sewerage provision for both locations. Neighbour objections also raise these points. This looks like overdevelopment of this very narrow site. There is no visitor parking provision, either on-site or off-site, due to no frontage to either plot for off-site visitor parking. Joan, in her introduction, mentioned the geography and the recent housing development of Tulip Close and the main development at the front with the pictures, constructed in 2022 to 23. During the lengthy application process and consultation of that scheme, the village brought to the attention of both the developer and Dacorum Borough Council the long-standing sewerage overflows affecting Croft Lane that had been occurring multiple times per year. The drainage utility proposed alternative routing for the southern section of the 15 dwelling site. However, the routing from the northern section continued to be via Croft Lane, creating the likelihood for potential sewage overflows to occur. At this year's annual parish meeting, an overwhelming number of residents attended and made representations stating that not only are outflows of sewage continuing to occur in Croft Lane, but at new dwellings in Tulip Close. These outflows of out-treated sewage are occurring in Croft Lane, where the Punami lifts inspection covers and fills the gardens with excrement. But also, there have been many instances in Tulip Close of the new dwellings where sewage overflows have risen out of ground floor WCs, and then the contents spread across the entire ground floor. These proposed two dwellings are likely to increase the demand on the sewer system in this part of Chipperfield.
So bear with me. Good evening, Chair and committee members. I'm Richard Thompson, the applicant for the yard. Thank you for allowing me to speak. At present, the site is a commercial storage yard for roofing materials in the middle of a residential area. Approving this application would remove that use entirely, along with the large commercial vehicles that regularly come and go as part of the existing business. As the case officer confirmed, the proposal makes efficient use of brownfield land and represents sustainable development within the village boundary. Replacing the yard with two modest homes clearly improves the peace, safety and character of the area. Our village faces a real shortage of smaller, manageable homes, the kind that older residents can downsize to and younger families can afford to stay in. The officer's report notes that the dwellings are appropriately sized, modest in scale and consistent with surrounding homes, with garden provision and internal spacing exceeding national standards. The development helps redress that imbalance by providing exactly the kind of homes our village actually needs. We've provided full and legal proof of our right of way over both entrances. The case officer has recognised this. Written confirmation of access rights has been provided, and this is ultimately a civil matter between landowners, not a planning concern. So there are no legal obstacles to this process. Modest scale, this is not a large or speculative development. These are small, sensitively designed homes that fit comfortably within the setting. The officer found that the design is sympathetic to the surroundings. The modest height and the scale would not harm the visual amenity or character of the area. In short, it's well designed, low profile and appropriate in every respect. The report confirms that the development would not cause harm to the setting of the conservation area, and the existing commercial use and ad hoc structures are visually poor and will be replaced by an improvement to the streetscape. Addressing concerns of the highways, as they have confirmed they have no objections. In summary, this proposal is lawful, modest and locally beneficial and policy compliant. It removes an unsuitable commercial use, improves safety and amenity, delivers the type of housing our village needs, and allows long-term residents to stay in the community. We respectfully ask the committee to support the officer's recommendation to approve. Thank you.
Good time.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We're being asked to consider this site as being suitable for residential development. It is not. It is a narrow, unmade, dirt track access between Chapel Croft and Tulip Close. That is clearly shown on the drawings, on drawing number 102 in particular, and also in the photographs. It's also grossly overdeveloped in terms of site coverage and what have you. There's no means of getting around any of it. There's no amenity space for either property. It's harmful to the local community. You've already heard from the parish council about the very, very serious sewage overspill problems they have there, to the point where our local MP is actually on the case with that, and local residents are considering taking action, compensation against DPC. The failure to deal with it, this has been a long-running problem. The systems in Chipperfield cannot take any more until there is improvement from Thames Water in terms of dealing with the sewage problem, particularly in this area, Chapel Croft. There's been several mentions in the report of this being previously developed land. It's not previously developed at all. It's as I described. It's just an open dirt access. And in fact, on their drawing number 102, they even confirm this. There is a track right the way through, and it states on there unmade. So there's been no development at all. There's no precedent. And this would not be of any advantage to the community, the area, or what have you. And I'm afraid I can't support this. And I would actually recommend refusal. If you want to park that, please.
We'll park that for the moment. Thank you. I think we had Councillor Allen at one stage, and Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to inquire from officers what is the status of sewage and such matters in terms of making a planning decision.
I think it's a tricky one, and we're coming up on this over and over again in many ways with statutory operators, Thames Water and Affinity Water, as to how much can we necessitate at the point of granting planning permission to ensure that there's adequate sewage and water capacity to serve a site. Yeah, a lot of the obligations fall outside the Planning Act. As to whether I would advise to resist granting a planning permission is otherwise acceptable solely on this, I doubt it. In this case, much like the last scheme, it's within the member's gift to impose a condition asking for a sustainable drainage condition, if you'd like, to ensure the best bet, that we can make provision as best as we can, liaison on this site. This scheme, rightly or wrongly, through conditions, can't address the issues of infrastructure within Chipperfield as a whole. We've got other examples of this in Long Marsden over the years. So we can seek to address this somewhat, asking for further details and some reassurance that this can be planned for, but withholding this application off the back of a wider issue is not advisable.
Councillor Allen, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Chairman. And this development would enhance the area, turning a yard for roofing materials into housing. It would basically fit more with the building line of the immediate street scene. But sewage is a concern. It's been highlighted by the parish councillor speaking and by the parish council's comments in the reports pack. But the suggestion that a condition be included to that there has to be a drainage strategy that would address the concerns about sewage. And with that, including that condition about the drainage strategy, I'll propose the officer recommendation to delegate with a view to approval. You might want to park that to allow further discussion.
Thank you for that. Any further comments? Councillor Hobson.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I think if sewage was a material planning application, I'd probably be turning it down, but otherwise, I think the sewage concerns are legitimate. It's just a shame we can't really, other than what the officer has suggested. I just have one quick question, which was what's happening to the meadows, the bit that's in blue on that picture. While we were talking, I went to the previous application that was for the single dwelling, and the bit in blue is called a meadow, and it runs across the whole of that side of the site. If you imagine that plot B wasn't there, and I just wondered, I guess it's remaining as grass, but do we know what's happening with it? Just out of interest.
No, is my honest response. I'm obviously presenting this application on behalf of the case officer that was dealing with it. It's outlined in blue, telling us that it's owned by the developer. It's not forming part of this planning application. It was forming part BNG, if you'd like, in terms of the last scheme, and there was a garden area within it, the scheme before that. But honestly, I don't know, and it's not something I can give weight to as part of this planning application.
Thank you. I've been looking through the plans on the planning portal, and I just can't see it. It's probably there somewhere. How wide is the plot, and how wide is one of those properties? So what is the circulation space around each side of it? Because on the plans, it looks very tight.
I'll take a measurement in a second. If I haven't specifically measured, I know that plots A and B, the measurements of them are just over 6 metres. And the case officer makes reference in her report that there's just below 1 metre.
I mean, it does look
each
exceptionally
side.
tight. I mean, can you walk? Plot A, can you walk down the side of the top? You know.
Elspeth, could you go back to the photographs of the site?
Can. We'll get
I think.
Is it a metre, half a metre? What are we looking at?
I don't want to mislead, but I think the site, in the context of the scale of the buildings around it, looks smaller than what it is. If it's fair to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what is the width of the plot and what is the width of the house, and we can work it out, can't we?
So taking the measurements, you would be between 7 and 8 metres on the width of that site.
Between 7 or 8 metres.
Between 7 and 8 metres. So if the house itself is 6 metres, I can take a measurement on the plan and scale it off.
Yeah.
Let's do that. I'm hesitant a little bit because I haven't measured the site, but taken a scale from my plan, It's measuring up just shy of 9 metres.
What, the width of the plot?
Yeah. I've taken at one point, nearest the northern point.
Is it 9 metre, is it tapered at all? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm splitting hairs here, but it just on the plans, it looks exceptionally tight. It does to me look like a quarter pint pot. And I mean, the view of the windows either side, we're looking straight into a fence, aren't they? I mean, it's yeah, it is what it is. You can't make it any wider and you can't make the properties any smaller. But you'll be looking straight into those fences either side. Thank you.
Any further comments? If there are no further comments, can I suggest that we consider going to?
Well, I was just going to mention that, if I may, that it looks from the plan that they're really tiny dwellings, but actually they're 84 square metres. The main concern then with the size is that there are 2 bedrooms which have a height constraint as well, and it doesn't actually show a bed in the bedroom, and they're about 3.1 metres square roughly. Are they actually big enough? Would they comply with the building requirements?
Yes, I have a section through showing that the height of 2.4 metres is achievable up there. So yeah, I'm comfortable that it would adhere to building regs. The bedroom sizes are you can see there 3.13 by 3.2. So they're not, you know, inadequately small to serve those properties.
Thank you.
Phil.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to add a couple of details in response to the debate that's been had. Firstly, in terms of side windows, looking onto fencing, looking through the ground floor plans, it does appear that all the side windows are either serving a bathroom or a hallway, or where they serve a habitable room, they are also serviced by a front or a rear-facing window. So I thought it's important to clarify the impact of the side-facing windows. Obviously, in terms of overdevelopment, the question there is whether the plots are large enough to provide sufficient amenity space and parking spaces. So they're each providing 2 parking spaces, and the gardens are I think they're about 10.5 metres deep and about 9 metres wide. So certainly for a 2-bedroom properties, we wouldn't be able to sustain a reasoned refusal on inadequate amenity space. So in that sense, they are. It's obvious to you that this wouldn't constitute overdevelopment. Obviously, whether members feel that it's cramped within the plot, that's obviously a character point in terms of the character and appearance of the area. Though we do know that there are older properties on adjacent roads with kind of similar proportions, similar depth of rear gardens. And then finally, just in terms of the point of sewerage and wastewater capacity, this can be a material planning consideration. It does depend on the circumstances of the case. I'm not quite clear in this instance of the comments of the utility companies. I might need to defer to Joan on that. But members should be need to remember that if there is a condition that can overcome harm, then rather than refusing, the council should be imposing those conditions. So therefore, if there is a concern over the capacity of sewerage, wastewater treatment plants, or how we deal with foul water, then it is possible to add a pre-occupation condition, that this concern be satisfied pre-occupation. So it shouldn't prevent the permission, but it could be related to occupation. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I think that might be an interesting way of Taking it. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you. I would just like to propose that as an amendment that I could support. Preoccupation, make sure the sewage doesn't mess up. I don't have the technical terms, but basically make sure the sewage works, preoccupation. Thank you.
Joan, you've got that? Right, okay. So we've got a proposer to accept officer's recommendation from Councillor Guest. Do I have a seconder? I think Councillor Hobson got there first. So that's a seconder. Can I have a show of hands, those in favour of officer's recommendation, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favour. Those against? 1, 2. And I'm abstaining. So with the additional condition, preoccupation condition, officer's recommendation is carried. Councillor Riddick.
Yes, seeing as you've arrived at that decision, can I draw your attention to point 9.2, which states that the site resides within a designated village boundary of Chipperfield, where in policy CS6 of the core strategy is relevant, which states the limited infilling with affordable housing for local people will be permitted. It's only on that basis. So can we have a condition that this is for affordable housing? That's what it says.
Councillor Riddick, can you just refer me again to where you're, did you say paragraph 9 point?
On page 97, or 96, 97, 9.2. This type of infilling is only approved for affordable housing for local people.
Sorry, I was looking at the committee report. You're referring it to the actual policy. I don't mean, so policy CS6, it's a policy as part of our core strategy. At the time of adoption, it was intended that any new dwellings that were coming into the smaller villages in the green belt would be for affordable housing for local people. We struggle to ask for that, given what's coming forward at national policy level. Some time ago, there was a ministerial statement that set out that we weren't to ask for affordable housing on schemes less than 10, and that's effectively coming through now at national level as well. There's a bit of to and fro with that with regards to some new specifications. But in short, I think that it's unreasonable, given the national context, for us to insist that these be affordable housing on 2 units for local people, unfortunately.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I disagree with that. It states quite clearly, any infilling of this nature can only be undertaken for affordable housing for local people. Now, we've got a lot of local people who do need some affordable housing. And I think that if we are approving this, that is exactly what these should be. Affordable housing. That's what it states.
I think with respect, Councillor, the vote has been taken and the debate has passed, but
Yes, it has, but just clarification, in that sentence on page 97 at the very top, it says, however, the note clarifies that the affordable housing requirements in CS6 are not applicable. So I think that's where we're at, sub 10, etc., etc. Anyway, the vote has been taken and officer's recommendation has been accepted, subject to the precondition. Now, I'm very conscious of the time. It's now 10:10. We've got two applications on the agenda. We've got speakers waiting very patiently for one of theirs. Can I suggest that we take the Markyate one where the speakers are present and then ask whether we want to go on to 5E afterwards, but it is now 10:10. Phil.
Yes, as we are at 10:10, we do need to take a vote as to whether the committee wishes to continue to 10:30.
Those in favour of going until 10:30? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that's the majority. Right. But we will stop at 10:30. Almost irrespective.
Thank you, Chair. So we are moving to 5F as there is a public speaker. This is the development. Just come to it. Yeah. So it's, if you minimise it slightly, it's a development of single-storey front extension at 29 Parkfield, Markyate. It's at committee due to the country view of the parish council. Next slide. Yeah, if you can minimise it a little bit more again. So here we can see the sides and end of terrace dwelling on the southern side of Parkfield. Next slide. Here we can see again the view of the site from above. It's worth noting on the northern side of Parkfield, we can see all the raised parking pads that are being constructed, having quite a significant impact on the character of the area. Next slide. On the block plans on the left-hand side, if we scroll down a little bit more, we can see the left-hand side is the existing block plan. It's already a 2/3 width front extension, and the proposal is to make it a full width front extension. And as the front extension already connects to the boundary with number 27, this proposal would have no further impact on the attached neighbour. Next plan. Here is the proposed existing and proposed ground floor plans. We can see that there is a change to the room arrangements resulting from this proposal. Next slide. There are no changes to the first floor and therefore no parking implications, no additional bedrooms. Next slide. The front elevations, apologies for the yellow mark on the proposed front elevation. It doesn't mean anything. It was marked by officers in error. And it simply shows the full width front extension of the relatively modest depth of the existing, matching the existing depth. Next slide. Here we can see that modest depth to the front extension from side views. And we can also see that the property is set a considerable distance back from the road, albeit higher than the road. Next slide. Some photos. Here we can see number 29 with the existing. It's the one with the steps on the right-hand side picture, and we can see so filling in that right-hand side third would be where the extension will go. Next slide. And views from the further views with number 29 on the far left. And next slides. Here we can see some examples of front extensions. Officers do acknowledge that front extensions of this scale are rare along Parkfield. However, there are examples, and as I've mentioned, there are now a considerable number of these raised parking pads, which in officers' view have a considerable impact on the character of the area. And yep, so just to finish on this slide, the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Objections raised regarding this extension were that the property would be too large with the proposed planning, creating a large front extension running the whole length of the property. The property is situated on an end terrace in the middle of a residential street of social and now some privately owned homes. The property has already undergone extensive renovation. Further additions would risk the property not fitting in with its surroundings. The Council's policy on home extensions includes compatibility with the existing neighbourhood, and it must fit in with the existing neighbourhood and its landscape. This property, given any more extensions and renovations, runs a large risk of not fitting in with this criteria. It should be noted that when the original planning permission was applied for the front and rear extensions, the planning officer's report stated that the front extension was probably at the limit of a tolerable size given the elevated position of the size relative to the road. Indeed, the original application was acknowledged that the front extension was large, and in the design and access statement, justification for this was stated as, there is a small setback to the side of the porch to ensure a 45-degree view from the neighbour's front window. This is already considerably less than it was before for the neighbour. This further addition to the property would encroach on the views even further. The parish is in agreement with the planning officer in that the property has been extended and renovated to within its tolerable limits, given the street and position in which it is situated. No other property in Parkfield has a full length of the house front extension. Thank you.
Hello. You will be relieved to hear that I have very little to add to Markyate Parish Council's objection. Safe to say this application appears to come up for a third time, having been objected to before now. So perhaps that all goes to prove that if you keep at it, eventually the planning officer will capitulate. With a previous application that was granted in 2023, the planning officer stated, as it's already been said, that the front extension that was there was probably at the limit of tolerable size, given the elevated position of the site relative to the road. So what has changed? Nothing, not the site and not the road. And the larger extension planned would impact further on the neighbour's front room view of a 45-degree angle. It has been rejected before and should be again. Thank you.
Right. Members, comments? Questions? Councillor Allen.
Could the officer please talk us through, talk us through, you know, why previous applications were turned down and this one is being recommended for going forward?
So, yeah, I mean, I have the same planning history in the report as members do, which shows a 2023 application, which was granted. I'm assuming therefore that any other planning history would have been predating 1990, which is a change of computer systems. So I'm not aware, not being the case officer, of a history of refusals on this side. I'm aware of the grant of planning permission in 2023. Obviously, members need to consider the current application before it. It is acknowledged that the 2023 permission, there was that statement from the planning officer at the time that it was probably at the limit. It's certainly not a terminology I would encourage officers to use, because context changes, policy changes. This is a simple question effectively before members in terms of whether going full width has such a significant detrimental impact on the character of the area that it warrants refusals. Officers' view is that because it's set back from the road, because the character is affected, the wider street scene is affected by the raised parking pads, and the overarching character of the street is these two-storey dwellings set back with gable ends. That kind of wider characteristic is not affected by what happens at ground floor in these small, and it is a front extension of a modest depth. So on balance, it's officers' view that this application can be supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, again, I am a county councillor for this Markyate, but I've not seen this application, so I come with an open mind. I feel that this is too big, not fitting in with the other houses, and the encroachment on the neighbour. I think that's pretty unfair. You may say it's modest, but it's very, very different, full length, and I don't think it should be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I think if we didn't have the history, I would be very surprised why this has come to the planning committee, because it's such a tiny addition. But I do understand the history. I'm sympathetic to the parish council, and I kind of see where they're coming from. But in terms of material reasons for turning it down, I don't have that, and I would disagree with Councillor Smith-Wright, because I think the encroachment is already, the impact on the neighbour is already there, because the other side, there's a big gap to the next house. So I would be happy to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Park that for the moment. Any further comments? Right, in which case, we've got Councillor Hobson proposing to move officer's recommendation. Do I have a seconder? I think Councillor Whitelow got there first. Can I have a show of hands? Those in favour of officer's recommendation, please. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 in favour. Against, Councillor Whitelow, against, and 1 abstention. Sorry. About that. Sorry about that.
So 9 on 1.
Yes. So that's officer's recommendation carried. Right, the time is now 10:25. I suggest, Phil, that we review what we're going to do next. Can I suggest that we defer 5E? Do a quick review of your appeals and the comment that you want to make, and then we close at 10:05.
Yes, I mean certainly the where it's very unlikely that an application can be considered in 6 minutes, then it shouldn't be started. But if the chair feels that this item could be covered in 6 minutes, then we could I'll leave that to your decision, Chair, but
Thank you, Philip. No, I think this is probably too important to take it in 6 minutes. It's not good practice, in my opinion.
So, shall we move on to the appeals update?
Right. Members, with your agreement, we move on to appeals update.
Yeah, thank you. So this will be brief. The appeals update covers the period of September. 6 appeals lodged, the most notable being the land at Shepherd Knoll. The appellant considers the development not to be an appropriate development in the Greenbelt, and in any case has a plethora of very special circumstances. Members will remember this was refused at committee in line with officer recommendation. There's only been 39 appeals submitted up to the end of September in 2025. That compares to 66 at this point last year. So appeals lodged is considerably lower. In terms of appeals dismissed, 51 Benjamin Ways, I think is the most notable one. The inspector then notes this was a scheme refused on the basis of harm to a TPO tree, and the inspector noted that could be twofold. You got the direct impact from the construction, but then also future pressure to heavily prune or remove the tree resulting from the development. In terms of allowed appeals, there are 2 majors allowed from members overturning the officer recommendation. The first one is Haresfoot Farm. Here the inspector concluded that the package of highway works and the package of other measures such as the car club, the community hub, etc., offered a genuine choice of modes of transport and kind of sustainable transport solutions. The inspector overall concluded that the development would be an appropriate location for new housing, and that it would make a notable contribution to meeting the borough's housing land supply. The inspector also gave great weight to the fact that a scheme for 61 dwellings on the site had been subsequently granted. The second one is the Sang at Green Lane. The inspector agreed that there would be harm to the openness, albeit limited, and the development would be contrary to the Greenbelt purposes of safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. However, the inspector gave great weight to the Sang unblocking delivery of housing, which overcame those Greenbelt harms, particularly as the inspector concluded that there was no harms, no technical evidence to support any highways or flooding harms, and indeed the inspector awarded costs against the council for pursuing its flooding arguments. In terms of enforcement, there was 2 dismissed appeals. The one at Church Road is obviously a site that has come to the fore quite a lot. Here, there was no appeal on planning grounds and planning merits, but the inspector concluded that the development had occurred, was a breach of planning, and was not immune from enforcement action, and therefore dismissed the appeal. In terms of statistics, the general picture is excellent. Only 17.5% of appeals have been allowed. That compares to a national average of 31%. Obviously, there are concerns in terms of majors. According to my calculations, we are now 9.5% of majors received, subsequently being allowed on appeal. Once we go above that 10% mark, we will then receive a letter from central government asking us to explain ourselves effectively, with the risk of being put into special measures And ultimately, the risk there is that developers can take their applications direct to the planning inspectorate. And that concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Right. I think that closes the formal part of the agenda. You might like to mention the 29th of October.
Yes, so yes, there have been several requests from several members for member training. So we've looked at dates, and the next available date is October the 29th. So we will look to cover in a bit more detail some of the appeal decisions that have been reached, substantiating reasons for refusal, and I also understand there's been an interest in terms of heritage considerations. So hopefully we can also include that. So yeah, so an invitation will come out tomorrow, so please look out for the member training on October the 29th.
Thank you for your forbearance this evening, everybody. Thank you. Meeting closed.